the idea from this from Bruce Milsky. So.
Woo.
From where?
Bruce Milsky, who's my old tech teacher.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're going to continue, or I don't even. Let me think. we're starting a unit on American music. So this is the roots of the roots, and we're gonna start out with an up and about activity. So get up.
Woo.
Okay. I'm gonna put on a metronome, and your only job is to step to the metronome. The only rule is that when you put your foot down, it has to be on a beat. Got it? Or you might want to come up and have some more space. And Eddie, you can do it too, but I'm not going to do it very much. Get up. Perfect.
Okay.
Alright, here we go.
Oh, jeez.
Oh,
Okay. Alright, let's try moving around. Actually, travel somewhere. Travel. Okay. Would somebody clap it for me and clap the accented note? Okay. Interesting. This is a trick question. Because the thing that I was just playing had notes that were exactly the same the entire way through. So why is that the accented note? Why is it?
because we have 2 feet.
Okay, all right, so you have 2 feet. So if you're right-handed, maybe 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, you're falling on your right foot more. Is that the only way? If there's no accent in the thing that I was just playing for you, how else might you feel it?
The downbeat?
Okay, you have 3, 4. What else can you have?
6.
Or 5, or 7.
5.
Okay, so let's try it with 3. Step and find some way, if your right foot is dominant, find some way to put your right foot down on the beat that you want accented.
Oh my god. Wait, confused.
Accent, find some way of walking the accents every 3. Okay. Here's another question. Did I say that you had to step on every single time it tapped?
No.
Eddie's got it. Okay. Find a different number to accent. I don't care which one, and you don't have to do the same. You two behind the piano, I guess. Okay. Great. That was spectacular. Did you hear what was happening? You were all accenting different beats, but you were all at the same tempo. You had the same 8th note, but you were all coming at different times. There's a word for that. Does anybody have any idea what it's called? Polyrhythm, yeah. Yeah, so you were stepping polyrhythms. Let's try that one more time. I want you to actually listen to your feet on the ground. Great. Great. I think that's very cool. All right, you can sit down. So, if we call the 8th note the beat that we were stepping, this is a terrible word. If we call the 8th note the beat that we were stepping the first time that you were stepping, could somebody come up here and put accent marks on the notes that we were accenting when we were stepping the very first time that you said that there was an accent every 2? We can do that. All right, Arthur, come on. I'll give you blue. So you know what an accent marks looks like, right? going to clap this or use some sort of body percussion, we need a sound that's harder and a sound that's softer. So we can have harder claps, or we can have two different types of sound. So let's pick a sound for the accent and a sound for the non-accent. Clap, pat, anything.
Can we stomp off on the
Okay,
non-
alright, sure. Stomp foot on the accented one and then clap. On. Okay, alright, let's try that. So let's do these four groups all the way to the end. We can keep repeating it, it's the same thing. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. Alright. So then the second way that we did it was with accents every 3. So that looks like, who can do that for me? Alright, Rachel, come up. Alright, while she's doing it, let's try it out. So that one's going to be a stomp, 2 claps, ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm gonna fix some things. We started getting on the wrong one here.
Oh.
That's okay.
Actually, go back one more.
Oh.
Oh.
Just go 1, 4, 3, 2. There you go.
Alright, so that's what we were actually just copying. Alright, somebody else, pick another number for us.
1.
1, alright, let's try it. We don't have to write that one. Ready? 1 and 2 and. Okay, so let's try this time splitting up the group and doing the same thing that we were doing with walking except with our clap and stomp pattern. So let's just split it down the middle here and I'll be on your side. You guys over here, why don't you take 2 and we will do 3. Let's see how that works. Alright, so I'm going to count to 4 and that's going to be the 8th note. But you have to figure out where your accent is from that. We can do it. Okay, so you're every 2, we're every 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, great. So there's one more way that we can listen to rhythms like this, and that is using this thing, which is a sequencer. And we can hear the sort of rhythms that we were just playing in a musical context by using this. So is anybody familiar with what this is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So all you do to make a sound on this is wait. Is that going good? Yeah, it is. Okay. Alright. So I want 2 volunteers to come up and put 2 different lines with different accent patterns on the sequencer. I want to see what it sounds like. First volunteer? Who hasn't been up yet? I'm going to let you go ahead. Okay, great. I was gonna say let's clap this, but this is a little difficult. Okay. Alright, second volunteer. Come up and put another line of anything. Who hasn't been up? Go ahead. Just make a line with some sort of accent pattern. And it doesn't even need to be one note. You can actually put 2 notes vertically and have a bigger sound so you can have them that way as well. Okay. Just a line. Click a couple and see what happens. Okay, let's is an illustration of how you can have one running eighth note that's the same but have different meter feels on top of it. And that is a characteristic of the first type of music that we're going to talk about, which, alright, so that's just, this is what that sequencer thing looks like if you had a physical one. Alright. So we're going to be talking about two different types of music today. We're going to be talking about African music, and we're going to be talking about Appalachian music. And we're going to listen to two different examples. And this right here is a worksheet that, if we were actually doing this, you would be familiar with, but I'll do a quick overview just to make sure that you actually understand everything. Do you want one? Okay, so this is just a copy of what you have. So let's quickly go over the items on this sheet, just so when we're listening, all of you are clear on what the expectations are for this. So title of work, obviously, is what it's called. Some of them have names, some of them don't. So our artist is the person who performed it. The artist's hometown or location is just that, where the artist was born or where they were when it was made. So either one can be relevant. Pick which one is more relevant. So if we were doing Mississippi Delta blues or something, that would be pertinent information. Okay. Style or genre. That's sort of something that you have to surmise from the cumulative of everything else that's on here, but I'll help you remember that for now. Solo or ensemble. So that just means, is it one person playing or is it a lot of people playing? And instrumentation or ensemble type. So if there's multiple people playing, who is it? What instruments do you hear? And if it's a specific type of ensemble, like a symphony orchestra, that would be something to list there. Lyrics. So lyric lines that are particularly important, sort of the meaning of the lyrics, anything like that can go under there. The purpose is it for fun? Is it for a religious purpose? Is it for a specific holiday? Anything like that. Patriotic, anything like that. Rhythm, so now we're getting up to what's on the PowerPoint. The rhythm is the time aspect of the music. So for that, you can say tempo, whether it's fast or slow, the meter, if you can figure that out, and any ostinati, so any repeated patterns that you hear, if you can notate them, that's great. If you can hear that there are some, list that. A melody is a succession of notes that move up, down, or stay the same using steps, leaps, or repeated tones. So you can list any of those. You can say, does it go mostly up? Does it stay mostly the same? Are there notes that are really high and really low, or are they sort of in the middle? That's called tessitura, which I didn't list. Is it major, minor, modal? Are there motifs that you hear again? Conjunct and disjunct motion have to do with steps or leaps. Conjunct is steps, disjunct is leaps. So does it leap all over the place? Does it go up by step and down by step? Harmony is the relationship between two or more simultaneous pitches. So these three long words here have to do with a word called texture. Monophonic means it's just one line of music. Polyphonic is something that we're probably not going to hear a lot in contemporary music, but that means that there's two lines of music going at the same time. And they're separate, so it's not a melody and chords, which is called homophonic. Polyphonic is two melodies at the same time. Chord progression, if you can figure that out. What kind of chord, if you can figure that out. If there's triads, sevenths, extended chords, which means that there's ninths, anything like that. Consonants or dissonance, does it sound like it's all part of the chord, or are there notes that don't really go in the hush? Dynamics, loudness or softness, and are there accents, or are there nice crescendos and decrescendos? So, or does it stay mostly the same? And then to continue, the form is the structure. So it can be binary, which is A and B, ternary, which is ABA, rondo, ABAC, whatever. Or if it's neither of those, just list the letters out for what it is. And are there any melodies that you hear repeated, which can be a clue about what form it is. The tone and timbre is the quality of the intonation tells you a lot about the timbre. And then we have 3 questions at the bottom, which we're going to get to at the end. Alright. So, our first listening example is a musical example from Zimbabwe, which is down here on the map of Africa, right there. And the people who play this sort of music are called the Shona people. And this music that they play on mbira, or the thumb harp, which is also called, which is what that picture is a religious type of music. So that's one item for your listening list. And it's supposed to bring the people closer to the ancestors for communication. The artist of this particular piece is unknown to me, as is the name of it, but you could just call it Bureau music or whatever you want. Right. So as you listen to this, I'm going to play it the entire way through, and I want you to try to get at least one word under every category that you have, and we'll discuss that at the end. First of all, do you like it? Second of all, what's the connection of this to the activity that we started out with?
The 2 melodies were like at different times.
Yeah, so you could hear the tap, 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 tap going in the background, and then the foreground, the actual mbira instrument, had a lot of 3s going on at the same time. So that's a characteristic of this type of African music, and keep that in mind because we're going to see that in the next recording as well. But let's quickly go over what you got. So let's get the first part because mostly you have that already. Rhythm. What are some of the salient points?
Fast.
Okay, it's fast. Sure, good. What type of note did it mostly use? Was it the same or different?
Same.
The same. They were all, we could call it eighth notes for the most part. So it had just a running string, and then what did we just say about the accent pattern? That's something that has to do with rhythm. Was it accented regularly? Sorry, what?
3 next to it.
Yeah, so there were groups of 3, groups of 4, and they were all happening at the same time. So it wasn't specifically in a meter. You could write it in 4/4, but there were all sorts of accent patterns. So that's something about rhythm. Melody. What did you notice about the melody?
It doesn't move a lot. Like,
Yeah.
it stays in the same spot.
Yeah, so it stays in the same thing, and you can see why, because if you look at the instrument, it's all, you don't have that much of a range. You have the little tines and the big tines, and that's not much of a difference. So, they're close together. Okay, what else? What about, do you remember those words that I mentioned before, conjunct and disjunct? Was there a lot of or was it mostly
Oh, for
Which
the
one?
melody?
Yeah, the melody.
It pretty much stays the same.
Yeah, but did you hear lines going down and up, or did you hear things that were up hard? It was disjunct, mostly disjunct, and you can see that why, if you look at the instrument for that too, because you have one thumb that goes over here, one thumb that goes over here, and they alternate. So one of them has a high note, then one of them has a low note, and so there's not much going on for melodic lines. So it's more, the melody is rhythmic, if that makes any sense. Alright, let's go on. Harmony. Did you hear any accompaniment? No.
Two
I've
independent
heard-
lines, I guess.
Yeah, so we didn't have another accompanying instrument, but you could consider the lower part of the mudira to be an accompaniment. So it sort of did. It did have one. Yeah.
So I put polyphonic, is that wrong?
I would say that this is monophonic because it's just, it's an interesting question. I would say monophonic because it's just one line going on at the same time, unless, I suppose you could write them as two lines. Could be.
But because it's just on one instrument.
Yeah, that's an argument we could get into. So it's one instrument, but there are sort of two lines going on. So we won't get into the nitty-gritty, but at least you realize that. Okay. Dynamics. Was there a lot of dynamic range?
No.
No, not much. Okay, that's all we need to say about that one. Form. Any ideas on this one? Was anybody paying attention?
You cannot get that.
Okay. Well, when I was listening to this, I heard one part that was, let's see if I can rewind to it. The part that began it came back a couple times. This part with the running eighth notes. And then we also had this part that came back a couple times. So it was sort of like ABA to me. Oops. That's sort of how I heard it. Alright, tone. How do you describe this instrument? What does it sound like? Can you tell me any other things that it sounds like? Any instruments that we know?
Marimba.
Sort of. Okay. So yeah, you could call it, I mean, metallic maybe. They both have the metal, or you could just say it sounds like a lira. That works for me too. Okay, good. Let's do the next one. Flip over your sheets. This next one is an Appalachian fiddle tune, and this was recorded in 1951 by Mike Seeger, who went out and did field recordings of traditional American music. Old-time fiddle music is sort of a marriage of music that was brought over by immigrants from Ireland, Scotland, England, with music that was brought by the slaves from Africa. So you're going to hear a lot of the same rhythmic patterns in this that you heard in the Mudira recording, and I want you to keep an ear out for those. That's what they spoke like in 1950. top part, again, I'm sure you could figure this all out. Purpose, we didn't really go over. The people who lived in the regions where this style of music developed were farmers, they were coal miners, they were manual laborers, and this music was just a type of release for them at the end of the day. It was for fun music. They would play with friends, they would dance to it. So that's what this music is for. Alright, so let's go down the list. Rhythm, what did you notice about this? You sped up, okay. Okay, alright. What type of note did you mostly see here? Eighth notes. So a lot of eighth notes, which is similar to the recording that we heard before. What about accents? What was going on with this one? Because that's sort of our theme for the day. So what was going on with the rhythm? What was going on with the accents?
So I'm always on the downbeat after like 4 maybe.
Yeah, so it was in 4/4. So we have the same sort of deal here where you can write it in 4/4, but internally within the 4/4 there are different accent patterns. Did anybody hear any groups of 3 in here? Yeah, like yeah, so we call that syncopation. Okay. So I'll play it I'll play the very beginning one more time, just miss that first time so that you can hear it. So if you think about every 4, he's not accenting, or I must just say, let's stop the 4. Is his accent always on the beat every time? Yeah. Okay. Good. Alright. The next one, the melody. What did you hear in this one?
Repetitive.
Yeah, it was sort of repetitive. It's 2 parts, I can tell you that. There's an A and a B part to it. So he played it like 4 or 5 times, so we heard the melody a bunch of times. In terms of conjunct or disjunct, which one? Yeah, so I'd say that it was more towards the conjunct side than the last one, but there was still a lot of disjunct motion in this one. I want you to listen. I'm going to play a super little clip, and I want you to listen for the drones that he plays, because those are the equivalent of the bass part that we heard in Zumbira again, before rather.
I'll play
So do you hear the strings that are ringing? Yeah. Alright. Harmony. Did we have any harmony instruments? No, just a fiddle. But as we just talked about, okay, the bass part of the fiddle is sort of like a harmony. He's sort of accompanying himself in this. Alright, we're going to speed through this. Dynamics.
Steady.
Steady. Sort of mezzo forte-ish. Not terribly loud, not terribly soft. Okay. Form. I just told you there's 2 parts. Did anybody catch what order they go in? Yeah. There you go. Alright. Tone. How would you describe it? In terms of comparison to a classical violin, for example, how does it sound?
Sounds really rough.
Yeah, a little rougher, a little scratchier, but it still sounds like a violin, right? Okay. So I'm gonna try to wrap it up. I have one more activity, but we'll skip it. But just as a preview for what we would have done, there's 3 questions at the bottom. The EQ stands for essential questions. How does this piece of music draw from music that came before and contribute to music that came after? That's number 1. Number 2, what meaning did this music have to the people who played it and heard it at the time of its creation? And number 3, how does this music reflect the historical events, culture, and the individuals that created it? So if we had a little bit of more time, we would make a comparison diagram, a Venn diagram up here, and write a thesis statement for each of those points to answer the questions with the comparison between the two examples. So we could just do one really quickly. The first one is the first one is the one that we're sort of after right now in this lesson. So how does this piece of music draw from music that came before and contribute to the music that came after? So for this, if we were going to write a thesis statement, we'd have to compare all the different elements of the analysis that we just did and figure out what came from the African music and how did the African music contribute to the Appalachian music. And then for our next class, we would be looking at music that came after, like bluegrass and stuff, so we can continue the line. But in terms of that, can somebody just give me, we don't have to do a formal thesis, but can somebody just give me one example of how the African music influenced the fiddle music that we heard? Yeah, rhythms. What about them?
Syncopations.
Syncopations. Yeah, so that's our main thing. That's our main theme for today. So if we were going to write a paragraph on this, that could be the topic of it. That would be a good topic. So we'll wrap up there, but that's something to be thinking about whenever you hear music. These three questions, and how would you describe it to somebody else if you had to write it or talk about them? Okay.
Cool.
Woo.
And now Miss Anderson will write you all passes to